This is a mathematically engineered, highly toxic, and entirely fatal biological trap. The massive corporate technology machine profits exclusively from this state of mass cognitive fragmentation and constant digital dependency. Elite Silicon Valley institutions actively suppress the severe clinical data regarding chronic task switching and its irreversible impact on human intelligence. Constant digital hustle literally fries the human central nervous system from the inside out, causing severe structural degradation. The precise biological mechanism responsible for actively shrinking brain mass under constant distraction is intentionally hidden from the general public. A critical window of opportunity to reverse this severe neurological fragmentation is closing rapidly today. Ignoring these next clinical minutes guarantees a permanent state of intellectual stagnation and generational financial poverty. Elite financial leverage absolutely requires a naturally dominant, deeply focused, and sharply functioning human brain. Modern fake productivity actively destroys that exact vital biological hardware. Time is rapidly running out to fix this induced metabolic disaster before the neural damage becomes absolutely permanent. Modern working class blindly worships the aesthetic illusion of being constantly busy. They falsely believe that rapidly answering endless emails, switching between tabs, and attending back-to-back virtual meetings builds an elite financial empire. This is a dangerous, highly manufactured illusion explicitly designed to keep the masses perpetually distracted, exhausted, and mathematically poor. The human brain manages daily metabolic energy with extreme, uncompromising precision. It absolutely requires natural, uninterrupted biological silence to function perfectly and process complex, asymmetric variables. Severe daily multitasking violently disrupts this essential neurological energy supply, throwing the entire cognitive operating system into a hidden state of physiological panic. Human brain is mathematically incapable of processing multiple complex data streams simultaneously. It requires absolute singular focus to execute high-level logical reasoning and deep strategic thought. Forcing the brain to jump rapidly between unrelated digital tasks aggressively overrides this essential evolutionary design. The biological tax is devastating. Fluid intelligence drops significantly. Short-term memory fragments completely. Highly compliant employees secretly suffer from extreme crushing mental exhaustion every single day of their lives. They look physically productive and highly organized on the outside, but their biological hardware decays rapidly on the inside. This is the dark, unspoken neuroscience of the modern fake productivity mentality. Exhausted workers constantly hide their overwhelming, chronic daily brain fog simply to maintain their professional status. They physically lose the biological capacity to read complex books, build independent systems, or execute deep, strategic financial work for extended periods. Their delicate neural pathways are actively burning out from severe, relentless overstimulation and artificial urgency. The illusion of perfect time management perfectly masks a terrifying biological reality. Forcing extreme digital compliance while the attention span is exhausted destroys the nervous system completely. The biological cost for maintaining a full, chaotic calendar is severe, irreversible early-onset neurodegeneration. How multitasking physically shrinks your brain. The human brain relies on a highly sophisticated network of protected neural pathways to transmit data seamlessly. These vital pathways are physically insulated by a thick, protective biological material called the myelin sheath. Myelin guarantees that electrical signals travel across the brain at extreme lightning-fast speeds without losing vital data. Elite cognitive function, profound creativity, and rapid problem-solving demand thick, healthy, and highly robust myelin insulation. Multitasking is a literal, mathematical, biological disaster for this essential protective layer. Human evolution never designed the fragile nervous system to endure relentless, rapid digital context switching. Every single time human attention shifts from a spreadsheet to a smartphone notification, the brain must aggressively recalibrate its entire operational focus. This rapid, forced recalibration creates massive biological friction deep inside the skull. Chronic mental friction literally strips the essential myelin from the neural pathways, exposing the raw, delicate nerves underneath. The biological response to this structural degradation is immediate, violent, and highly devastating to the individual's cognitive future. Without proper insulation, electrical signals begin to violently short-circuit, leak, and misfire across the cerebral cortex. Neural electrical processing slows down dramatically due to severe structural damage and compounding oxidative stress. Executive function physically shuts down to save finite metabolic energy, redirecting power only to basic survival mechanisms. Complex financial problem-solving becomes a literal, physical, biological impossibility under these fragmented conditions. The individual falsely believes they're working faster and achieving more by aggressively juggling 3 digital tasks simultaneously. Biologically, they are aggressively inducing early-onset neurodegeneration and a state of chronic, unshakable cognitive delay. The prefrontal cortex is the biological command center that dictates complex human logic and massive financial strategy. It is the absolute most metabolically expensive organ within the human body, demanding massive caloric resources. Multitasking abruptly cuts this vital fuel supply and recovery process completely, plunging the brain into starvation. The brain intentionally starves its highest cognitive centers to manage the constant, chaotic influx of meaningless digital data. This forced, systemic starvation physically shrinks the gray matter of the prefrontal cortex over time. The exact anatomical area responsible for elite wealth generation, impulse control, and long-term planning literally becomes smaller and weaker. Willpower cannot magically override millions of years of deeply ingrained evolutionary survival programming. A panicked, overstimulated brain forcefully redirects human attention toward immediate, low-level digital threats, completely ignoring long-term strategic opportunities. It completely blocks the biological capacity for abstract thought and asymmetric pattern recognition. A starved, physically shrunken prefrontal cortex cannot hold attention on complex financial systems for more than a few minutes. Modern digital hustle routine intentionally engineers a weak, docile, easily distracted mind incapable of challenging the algorithm. The worker feels highly intelligent simply because they answered 50 quick, low-leverage emails. Meanwhile, their actual cognitive machinery is rusting, short-circuiting, and actively failing them. The biological cost of constant task switching. Operating in a permanent state of digital distraction guarantees severe, irreversible biological consequences that extend far beyond a simple lack of focus. Chronic task switching forces the autonomic nervous system into permanent sympathetic overdrive, triggering an endless cascade of stress hormones. The brain misinterprets the constant barrage of digital notifications, unread messages, and artificial deadlines as severe physical danger. It violently locks the nervous system in a fight-or-flight biological response, misinterpreting the inbox as a literal predator. The physical body remains permanently trapped in a violent biological response, constantly preparing for a physical attack that never arrives. It is constantly fighting a silent, invisible, internal biological war that consumes massive amounts of cellular energy. The hypothalamus activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis to manage the perceived biological crisis. The adrenal glands are forcefully commanded to pump toxic cortisol immediately into the bloodstream. Pumping massive volumes of cortisol daily creates a highly toxic, corrosive internal environment. The adrenal glands literally fry under this relentless daily biological demand, completely losing their ability to regulate. They become severely exhausted, leading directly to clinical adrenal fatigue and total endocrine collapse. The human bloodstream becomes permanently flooded with corrosive, inflammatory chemical markers that damage cellular tissue. This toxic cortisol storm travels directly upward into the central nervous system, crossing the blood-brain barrier. Cortisol is highly neurotoxic when present in chronic, elevated amounts within the cerebral cortex. It violently attacks the hippocampus, the exact brain center directly responsible for memory consolidation and emotional regulation. The hippocampus physically shrinks under the crushing pressure of extreme daily multitasking. Learning new, complex skills like coding, investing, or advanced mathematics becomes a literal physical biological impossibility. Employees regularly forget basic vocabulary, struggle to articulate simple concepts, and suffer from extreme cognitive fatigue. They absolutely cannot maintain deep, meaningful conversations because their attention span has been violently shattered. The brain is entirely too busy managing the violent, internal chemical storm to care about building deep relationships or wealth. Microglia, which act as the essential immune cells of the human brain, begin to aggressively mutate under this stress. Under normal physiological conditions, they quietly clean metabolic waste and dead cellular matter from delicate neurons. However, chronic digital stress forcefully alters the microglia's biological behavior, turning them into hostile agents. They become hyperactive, aggressive, and highly destructive immune cells entirely out of control. Instead of cleaning the brain, they start actively attacking and eating perfectly healthy neurons. This is severe neuroinflammation driven directly by the toxic ideology of the modern productivity culture. The individual blindly believes they are building a highly efficient, streamlined corporate workflow. In reality, their own overactive immune system is actively destroying their brain mass. Why cheap dopamine destroys deep work. The human dopamine system is extremely fragile, highly sensitive, and easily destroyed permanently by modern digital environments. Dopamine is the vital molecule of motivation, internal drive, and intense, unwavering focus. It biologically dictates human ambition and the primal capacity to execute highly uncomfortable, difficult work. Healthy, sustainable dopamine release requires a baseline of massive biological effort and extended periods of friction. True deep work requires sitting with highly complex problems in absolute silence for extended periods. This creates necessary biological friction that rewards the brain over time, building immense cognitive stamina. Modern fake productivity completely hacks, exploits, and violently destroys this natural biological process. Ticking off small, meaningless tasks provides immediate, cheap, artificial spikes of dopamine without requiring any real cognitive effort. The fragile human brain rapidly becomes heavily addicted to this violent, unnatural chemical reward system. The individual starts blindly chasing fake productivity, rather than actually building sustainable, asymmetric financial leverage. This artificially decouples the dopamine motivation system from actual, difficult, and highly profitable economic achievement entirely. The human operating system downgrades to its absolute most primitive biological level, seeking only instant gratification. Over time, the central nervous system detects this toxic overstimulation and initiates a severe protective protocol. To survive the daily chemical flood of cheap stimulation, the brain executes a process called biological downregulation. It actively destroys its own dopamine receptors to reduce the chaotic noise and protect the underlying neural tissue. This is a terrifying, highly permanent biological defense mechanism that radically alters the individual's personality and drive. The highly compliant, constantly busy worker literally loses the biological capacity to focus deeply on a single profound task. Dopamine receptors require abundant metabolic energy and absolute physiological calm to synthesize and bind properly. Chronic sympathetic stress completely blocks this entire delicate neurochemical process from happening naturally. The individual completes their 50 daily checklist items perfectly, but they feel completely dead, hollow, and numb inside. They suffer from severe, clinically induced limbic anhedonia, a total inability to feel pleasure every single day. The pleasure and motivation centers of the brain physically shut down entirely to conserve energy. Natural, unforced motivation evaporates completely from their daily human experience, leaving behind a cold, robotic shell. Basic daily corporate tasks suddenly require monumental, exhausting, and highly painful conscious effort just to initiate. They become biologically dependent on cheap urgency and artificial digital notifications just to feel a fleeting sense of life. Without a highly stressful external demand vibrating in their pocket, they cannot gather the internal energy to function. They achieve their basic corporate goals flawlessly but become biological slaves to cheap validation. Keeping men obsessed with small, meaningless tasks keeps them cognitively weak, docile, and easily controlled. A cognitively weak man cannot execute massive, asymmetric financial leverage or challenge the status quo. The ultimate biological cost of cheap dopamine is the complete and total destruction of the capacity for deep work. The hidden link between to-do lists and low IQ. Chronic cognitive fragmentation is a severe, highly misunderstood biological epidemic sweeping through the modern workforce. Millions of office workers walk around completely unable to think clearly, their minds thick, sluggish, and paralyzed. They stare blankly at endless digital to-do lists, falsely attributing their profound exhaustion to simply having too much important work. Actual biological truth is far darker, highly disturbing, and mathematically devastating to their cognitive future. The prefrontal cortex is actively shutting down to survive the chaotic, highly unnatural inputs of the modern digital environment. Elite cognitive function relies entirely on a foundation of absolute, unshakable biological safety and silence. The brain must feel completely secure and undisturbed to enter the flow state and perform deep, uninterrupted work. A massive, never-ending to-do list mathematically signals a severe, life-threatening environment to the primal brain. The brain misinterprets the constant presence of unfinished tasks, known clinically as the Zeigarnik effect, as severe physical danger. It violently locks the autonomic nervous system in sympathetic fight-or-flight mode permanently, hijacking the amygdala. The individual literally drops their baseline fluid intelligence just to survive the psychological pressure of the uncompleted checklist. A highly distracted employee simply cannot outwork a fully focused, biologically optimized competitor mentally. A natural, deeply calm brain processes complex data variables at extreme, lightning-fast speeds with zero internal friction. Conversely, the overstimulated, distracted brain processes basic data through thick biological mud, constantly dropping crucial details. This clearly explains the secret, silent depression lurking directly behind the highly organized, perpetually busy worker. These heavily burdened workers possess zero biological energy for genuine joy, boundless creativity, or massive strategic ambition. Chronic digital task management is a direct, fully paved path to modern intellectual and economic poverty. The brain is entirely too busy managing the violent, internal stress response to build an empire. Toxic metabolic byproducts from chronic stress accumulate rapidly inside the human skull every single waking hour. The glymphatic system, responsible for flushing these highly toxic proteins out of the brain, completely shuts down. It only operates properly during deep, restorative, high-quality human delta sleep, which digital anxiety destroys. The constant dread of an unfinished to-do list violently destroys deep sleep architecture and essential delta wave production. The brain never fully cleans itself of the toxic metabolic waste, creating an environment of severe neurotoxicity. This guarantees chronic, compounding, and highly destructive daily brain fog that cripples all high-level executive function. The highly organized, perpetually busy worker cannot compete in the modern intellectual arena whatsoever. Their brain is entirely too busy fighting off perceived daily psychological threats generated by a glowing screen. The system keeps them constantly moving so they never stop to truly think, analyze, or rebel. The ultimate biological cost of an infinite to-do list is a permanently lowered IQ and a shattered attention span. How the elite reclaim absolute focus. Reclaiming absolute cognitive dominance requires completely and violently abandoning the modern fake productivity illusion forever. The true global elite optimize their entire existence solely for maximum neural horsepower, never for the aesthetic of busyness. They absolutely refuse to trade their biological focus and cognitive longevity for cheap corporate validation or digital dopamine. The human brain absolutely requires deep, unshakable biological calm to function brilliantly and flawlessly at the highest levels. Returning to a natural, highly stable biological baseline is absolutely mandatory immediately to halt the rapid cognitive decay. This targeted rest protocol stops the violent neural inflammation and halts the destructive microglial attacks instantly. Chronic digital multitasking and unnecessary application switching must be eliminated entirely to reduce toxic daily cortisol spikes. The vagus nerve must be activated daily through absolute stillness to enter deep, restorative parasympathetic recovery. This rapidly and efficiently flushes toxic metabolic waste completely from the fragile neural pathways, restoring crystalline cognitive clarity. Elite executive function returns rapidly once the artificial cognitive fragmentation and chronic cellular starvation finally end. The prefrontal cortex physically expands back to its optimal, powerful, and highly dominant biological size. Deep strategic focus becomes entirely frictionless, automatic, highly sustainable, and incredibly sharp against the competition. Memory retention sharpens immediately to elite, highly competitive global financial standards, allowing for massive data processing. The modern human being must deliberately choose today between endless digital distraction or absolute cognitive supremacy. Highest global earners always prioritize the protection of their central nervous system infinitely above checking emails. True modern power is strictly mental, highly strategic, deeply leveraged, and never relies on frantic digital motion. Rebuilding the shattered dopamine baseline requires totally abandoning the multitasking cult and its toxic dogmas. It requires treating the human brain like an elite, highly protected biological sanctuary that demands the highest quality inputs. This clinical breakdown firmly sets the required theoretical foundation for elite biological recovery and massive wealth generation. However, theoretical knowledge without exact, aggressive tactical execution guarantees absolute, mathematically certain failure. The exact, step-by-step clinical resources required to biologically rebuild these specific neural pathways exist right now. Are located directly in the description below this video right now. Go to the description immediately and access these elite optimization protocols today before the algorithm removes them. Applying these specific clinical resources guarantees the reclamation of lost cognitive dominance entirely and permanently. This eliminates severe brain fog fundamentally and completely bypasses the exhausted, highly distracted global competition. Subscribe to this channel immediately to join the absolute minority operating at peak biological and financial performance. Stop trading human cognitive longevity for a fake, highly toxic daily digital mentality that guarantees long-term poverty. The critical window of opportunity to reverse the specific neural damage is closing extremely fast. Reclaim the shattered nervous system today before the biological damage becomes permanent and irreversible.